Mr. Chair, I do. Your subcommittee of myself, Senator Quirmbach, and Senator Whiting recommend passage. Senator Quirmbach declined to sign.
You are in order for opening comments.
Thank you. House File 847 is much of the language that we have worked on in this chamber before that we sent to the House, and it's come back to us in the form of this bill. I'll just briefly go through those items so the committee is aware of those. It establishes a flexible student and school support program. It authorizes school districts to transfer unexpended and unobligated teacher leadership supplement funds to the district's flex account, as well as directs school districts and area education agencies to expend unobligated funds from teacher salary supplement by FY22. It increases the annual amount of classroom expenditures that an Iowa school teacher may deduct from their gross income taxes from $250 to $500. It expands the tuition and textbook tax credit by doubling the allowed expense amount from $1,000 to $2,000. It makes changes to open enrollment laws, including good cause purposes, as well as deadlines for certain students, and addresses interscholastic athletic ineligibility. It specifies that a school corporation is entrusted with public funds for the purpose of improving student outcomes, and it adds work-based learning coordinator and special education director to the operational sharing options. That concludes my opening comments. Mr. Chair, there is an amendment.
There is an amendment. We'll now bring up Amendment 2179. Senator Sinclair, your order for opening comments.
Thank you. Amendment 2179 makes several changes to this bill. The amendment reverts the athletic ineligibility to current law with a few exceptions for good cause, as well as for students who were adversely affected due to school closures in the 2021 school year. It requires the board of directors of each school district to administer the Pledge of Allegiance in grades 1 through 12. It gives the principal of a public school or a non-public school the authority to allow students to attend in person without a face covering if it is in the best interest of the child educationally. It increases the STO amount from 65% to 75% and removes triggers that are in place regarding the cap. It places a limit on the number of charters able to be approved by the State Board of Education based on student population in certain geographic areas. It also requires charter schools to abide by Chapter 22 provisions. It requires the chief administrator of a charter to have a BOEE authorization so that they are subject to ethics provisions, and it has some clarifying language for reporting and notification requirements that needed to be corrected. That concludes my opening comments on the amendment.
Are there any senators wishing to speak to the amendment? Senator Quirmbach, you are in order.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. There are a few things in the amendment that I'd like, but there are a few things that I have some questions about. Would Senator Sinclair yield?
Senator Sinclair, would you yield?
Of course.
Senator, with regard to the new division on page 3 regarding face covering requirements, this seems to grant principals the authority to waive a face covering requirement even if the school board has adopted such a policy. Is that really your intent?
If it is in the best interest of the child's educational opportunity, then yes.
Even though the school board may have exercised their legal authority to establish such a policy?
The language doesn't allow that.
Okay. Have the school principals asked for this authority?
I have had school principals request this authority.
You have high school principals. Has a principals association or any group of principals that we can identify?
No.
Would you care to identify the principals that have asked for this authority?
I would prefer not to. I'm assuming that they would prefer to remain uninvolved in this debate. The fact of the matter is there is data that indicates that students, and especially elementary schools, which is where the administrators have come to me, that students in elementary school learn better and are more able to interact and to be productive when their faces are not covered. And in instances where a school is at a point where a district is at a point where their positivity ratings are low enough, elementary students are unlikely to cause transmission or infection.
Well, I appreciate that there may be some scientific basis for that, but again, I go back to the question of whether that is not the authority of the school board, that is an elective body as opposed to a principal who is unelected.
Was that a question?
You think it's a good idea, by proposing this amendment, it seems that you think it's a good idea for principals to be able to override the school board who were elected by the local voters. That's the intent of the amendment, is to give principals that authority.
The intent of the amendment is to allow administrators, principals, to do the best job of educating children, which is their job. I would hope that they would do that in conjunction with the school board, but the amendment is silent on the involvement of the school board.
Okay, you would hope that they would do that in conjunction with the school board. I would certainly hope that they would do that in conjunction with the school board as well, but I don't think that they should have the legal authority to overrule the school board. So the other question I have is with regard to the unnumbered division on page 5 of the amendment. This division, in a couple of different sections, seeks to amend House File 813. House File 813 is still before the Senate. Why would we not just directly amend House File 813? Why would we try to do that through a different bill? I don't understand it. Is there some logical explanation for that?
This bill was before me, and I was crafting an amendment. These were necessary changes, and so I included them here.
Well, House File 813 needs to come before the full body. Shouldn't such amendments be offered to the House file itself when it comes before the full Senate? In order for these provisions of the amendment to go into effect, House File 813 has to be passed in the first place, right?
That is correct.
So why are we not amending House File 813 per se instead of indirectly through some other bill? That does not seem to make logical sense. Is there some explanation for that?
I chose to include them in this amendment.
Okay. Well, okay, so I think we're at a bit of a loss here as to why that provision applies here and not in the bill to which it applies, or is being considered here instead of the bill to which it applies. All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. That I was going to say resolves my questions. It doesn't, but at least I've asked them. Thank you.
There are any senators wishing to speak to the bill or the amendment? Seeing as none, Senator Sinclair, in order for closing comments on the amendment.
Simply move the amendment to House File 847.
Senator Sinclair moves Amendment 2179 to House File 847. How do you wish to vote? Short form is requested. All those in favor, vote aye. All opposed? Ayes appear to have it. Amendment 2179 has been adopted. We are back on House File 847. Are there any senators wishing to speak to the bill as amended? Seeing as none, Senator Sinclair, you are in order for closing comments.
Thank you. I simply move House File 847 as amended.
Senator Sinclair moves House File 847 as amended. How do you wish to vote? Short form has been requested. All those in favor, vote aye. All opposed? Ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. House File 847 amendment has been adopted and has been passed. House File 847 move on to regular calendar.